Your time starts now.
Okay, my literature review was on HCI speculative discourse. Since the rise of since the rise of computer technology, HCI has been widely researched. HCI refers to human-computer interaction, which is a term and a practice, both. So HCI, you interacting with computers. And what's meant by human-computer interaction is the intimate relationship between humans and technology. So, John Carroll stated that HCI became apparent during the 1980s with which is where research began, because computers started to be used by professionals for testing and sciences and things like that. And that is seen by the graph. If you look for it, I don't know if you can see it very well, but where it says 1980s, that's where it really started to shoot up in terms of like computer technology distribution. And basically the aim of my literature review was to gather a bunch of sources and then hopefully come to a conclusion of where HCI could possibly go in the future, in way of a term and, as in technology as well. As technology started to develop, futurists like Alvin Toffler and Gene Roddenberry started making their own predictions on what they thought would come out of the future in terms of technology. Alvin Toffler alluded to the notion of Oliver, which was basically, in its simplest form, a computer that would aid its user. Gene Roddenberry, he was the creator of Star Trek, and he put forward his predictions of certain technologies that he thought that we would be using in the future. One of Gene Roddenberry's predictions was the communicator, which in Star Trek it was used as a way for people to wirelessly communicate with each other, which is essentially the same as mobile phone, what we have today. So you can communicate with anyone, anywhere, anywhere in the world, pretty much. And that was the idea of the communicator, so quite a lot of similarities between the two there. Toffler predicted that Olivers, remember that's basically just a computer, a group of Olivers would be able to come together and perform video conferences to replace face-to-face interaction, or as an alternative to face-to-face interaction, which is very similar to Skype, what we have today, which is you can have video calls with multiple people, and it transmits speech and video at the same time. Liam Bannon actually suggests that that computers now act as an agent, which allow people to communicate. Now, an agent is typically if you think of it as a mode of transport for communication. So, for example, a mobile phone allows you to communicate between other people. So that's essentially what it is. And communication in this instance is the service that is enabled through the agent. So, he then goes on to speculate that human-centered design as a term, or HCD, is more relevant of the term than HCI is, because designs for computers and the interfaces of computers and things like that are now tailored for each individual user, instead of, anyone remember like Windows 98? Very, very long time ago. I mean, it wasn't exactly tailored to anyone. It was just, there you go, it can do this. It wasn't really special in any kind of way. So yeah, designs are now produced with the user's needs and desires in mind. So HUD was more of a relevant term now than HCI, because it's not so much about the interaction, it's more about how the thing looks, how it's tailored to a user, and how a user is communicating with it. I know it sounds like HCI, but it's more to do with, you know, taking a step back and looking at the design of it. With that term HCD, or human computer design, human-centered design, sorry, I kind of came to a realization that it kind of took a postmodernistic approach, especially with Baudrillard's notions of image is key and loss of the real, which does relate to HUD through the tailored designs. Baudrillard suggests that image is key in media, and that everything must look good regardless of whether it looks realistic. It just must look, you know, fantastic. Now, when I actually read Baudrillard's little passage on that, it didn't seem that he supported this, but he just said that this is what postmodernism is. So it is all about the image. This must look good. And he also suggests that the loss of the real is that we get lost in all of this, all these flashy images and things like that. We get lost in all of this tailored user interface for people. The image. Baudrillard talks about how there are two different sort of worlds in the Matrix. The real world is the picture at the bottom there, and the what is seen to be real, it looks really perfect, and that's the image up there. It's kind of just to show, you know. To further support this, Windows 8 has just released, and it's got this new tiled interface, which is nice and bright and vibrant, and it particularly relates to the notion of image is key. Where the large tiles and the large and colourful tiles make it easier for the users to navigate. Within the Being Human book, this is actually the picture from the Being Human book. It was suggested that in the future there's going to be like thousands of computers for every user. I mean, it shows like each of the steps in the technological era, and the one at the end basically is suggesting that computers will become almost like holographic, and it'll just be basically images that you move around with your hands. Again, supporting the term HUD, human-centered design, where it's built around the user for users' eyes. I mean, I don't know about you, but that would be much easier to use than the computers that we use today. Just going like that all day long, instead of, you know. Yeah, and then I went on to say that Grossman speculated on advancements in robotics, where it could go from robot-human hybrids to robots reanimating the dead, which is kind of a scary notion. And if this does eventually come to pass, it would actually render HCI as a term and HUD as a term completely obsolete, because they'll basically just be able to start thinking for themselves like robots. There wouldn't be any interaction if they're developing on their own. The robot-human hybrids are basically, Grossman speculated, it's basically humans that can download their thoughts and their consciousness as software, and put it into part of a machine. So, it's a little bit.
Okay, you're going to have to wrap things up, Matt.
Yeah. And Reanimate the Dead works in pretty much the same way. If someone's dying, download their thoughts and processes into software and put it into a machine so they can carry on. So it's a little bit. And to conclude, it could be argued that robots could surpass the human race in terms of evolution. I mean, everyone knows that technology is advancing faster than we are. I mean, if robots and things like that, they do get to develop consciousness, they can work on their own, they can be independent, and they could effectively be a race on their own. And as I said before, if this does happen, then HCI and HCD and those sorts of terms will become obsolete because there will be no interaction with humans and computers anymore. Yeah, and that's the idea for my case study.
The relevance of HCI, HCD and HCC currently and their future relevance to evolving technology.
I will just state that HCC stands for Human-Computer Coexistence.
I'll throw it open to the floor. Well done, Matt.
Yeah.
Well done. Better than last year. Well done.
Oh yeah.
So let's throw it open to the floor. I've got some questions, but I want other people to talk first. What about you, David?
Is HCC not still HCI, just the computers are interacting back?
No.
Why? Please tell us.
HCC is a term that I had thought of, or well, collaboration really.
Thank you.
And basically, it's not about when I talk about HCI, it's basically me on a computer typing on the keypad. Yeah, it's the physical interaction. I'm making a computer do something. Yeah. But HCC with human-computer coexistence is it's leaning more towards the fact of, say, we're just walking around and there's like robots with their own consciousness that they've developed and they're walking around too, doing jobs, things like that. Everyday lives like we sort of do. I'm kind of leaning more towards that sort of direction. So it's more of a social interaction,
right? Okay.
Rather than we're not making the computers do those sorts of things. They've developed that thought process on their own.
Okay.
So I'd say
So
that's
that's
more of
where
a
the term comes
redefinition of HCI.
I would say a reframing.
Yeah.
You're gonna reframe. I think this is what you're saying. You're going to try and reframe the terminology so it's more accurate to what's actually going on, or what
what could happen,
Okay.
yeah, potentially.
Okay, I understand that. That's great. I've got a couple of things that I want to pick up on. You're saying that this notion of downloading someone who's dying, their whole persona, to a storage device and then loading that storage device into another human being or such other thing. Are you aware of symbiotics?
Not exactly.
Okay, it's not a new field. They've been trying to experiment with this in microgenetics. And what it is they've introduced synthetic gene splices in order to hear me out. In order to do just what you're saying. Okay. So, and the other thing is that I don't think that's I don't think that's a relatively new idea, but I definitely think that this idea of hosting, okay, which is essentially what symbiotics is. You're hosting that. I mean, they've only got it at the DNA level where they host the DNA to keep it going, in order that when technology catches up, you can You can post that DNA somewhere else. Now, it could be a good metaphor for you to use, I think, in order to explain the reframing of how we might be, or there might be that transition of augmentation between humans and machines, which is already happening because people have pacemakers, don't they?
Yeah.
So essentially, they're cyborgs.
Well, I mean,
which is the transition, natural transitional period.
You're talking about it at a very, very basic level. This was a speculation of what's going to happen in the future. You said about DNA. Isn't DNA a living thing, isn't it? Can you? I mean, I'm not too.
Okay.
I don't really know much about it, but
it
is
can
it
be
extracted
reproduced.
from?
No, it can be reproduced synthetically, i.e., it's not real; it's man-made.
Okay. Well, neither are memories or consciousness. It's just something that we apparently exists. It's sort of like the soul. We don't know it exists, but people claim to have one. And it's like memories. They're not. It's not something physical. It's.
Okay. I'm just trying to.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that it wouldn't be captured in the same way that you said genes are captured.
I'm just trying to get you to think about how you might use an existing idea framework to try and explain your reframing this human-centered collaboration or coexistence, because I think you're going to struggle if you haven't got anything to use as a framework. Do you see what I mean? Because you won't be able to do it in the abstract, not in 2,000 words. And the idea is, if you're going to reframe terminology and render two other known understandings or approaches to what goes on in humans and computers and the relationship, then you're going to have a framework to be able to prove that those two past terms are redundant. Because I think that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to come up with this new understanding or new approach. Whether you can justify it in 2,000 words, you can certainly posit it and say, I propose that this is probably more accurate.
I think what Simon says is this is a really big, bold thesis.
Yeah.
You know, you are really, really ambitious. The things that you've tried to cram into this presentation, you know, they're off the rip. There's so many wide things, and it's amazing to see your brain jump all over the place. I just got one question though, because I guess I'm quite simple. I want to know how this impacts on content, and it's the same kind of question that I was saying to Paul. I'm all about the content. I want to know how human-computer interaction is going to change in your ideas the content of our entertainment, the actual media products. So the news or the radio or the programs that get put on.
Presented rather than.
Well, yeah, exactly. Will we have the need for
talking
presenting?
about how content will be presented, or the content itself, how that will change?
Either. I think they're really quite interesting
questions. The way in
questions.
which content will be presented could be extremely different. I mean, going back to the holographic computers, like 1,000 computers to one user sort of thing. I mean, that could, I wouldn't say easily, but it could potentially develop into, take New York for example, they've got millions of bulletin boards, like interactive, well not interactive, but they like video boards, haven't they, all around New York. Those could be changed to beam a hologram into, I don't know, the corner of a street with someone preaching the news or something like that. It could be done, that's how content could be presented in one way.
If we are digitized and we are online, you know, in your kind of far-flung future, you don't need to be in a particular place to see something, so you render billboards obsolete. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's quite fascinating to think, like, you know, that's a whole industry gone.
It's basically the destruction of the real, in that
You aren't there anymore. You are
Everywhere.
there.
Yeah, you just plug
Everywhere.
in. You just plug your
Yeah.
USB stick.
Whatever you want.
Drive
you
it
got.
into the back of your head. The Matrix to be real. I'm going to round things up because we need to move on. That was good, Matt. It
Interesting.
was good progression, which is what we're after.